right. Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar with Dreadnought Resources. In today's session, we will be hearing from Managing Director Dean Tuck, who will be discussing the company's key updates as we enter the final quarter of the year. There will be an opportunity for Dean to answer some questions after the presentation, and you can submit these via the Q&A function in the taskbar at any point during the discussion. And without any further ado, I'll hand over to Dreadnought's Dean Tuck. Dean, thanks for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you, Branka. This is Dean Tuck coming live from Orion, currently at the southern end near our campsite up at Tarraji-Yampi project. So having a bit of a difficulty seeing my screen, but I do have a presentation to run everyone through, and then have the Q&A there at the end of the presentation. There we go. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us today for this webinar. Dean Tuck, Managing Director of Dreadnought Resources, going to run you through a brief presentation and update across our projects, the activities that we have going across all of our projects, and a bit of update what we're doing here now and what we have planned for the rest of this year. So in order to things we'll talk about today, some of the main projects we'll talk about will be Tarraji-Yampi. That's where I'm currently sitting right now, and I'm sure lots of people are interested in what's going on up here. And I'll also talk about some of the work that we've been doing and announcements that have been coming out across the Mangaroon Rare Earth and Gold Project, and of course the Nickel Copper PGE joint venture earn-in with First Quantum. And I'll touch very briefly on Bresnahan and Central Yilgarn, which are buzzing away in the background. So starting off with Tarraji-Yampi, why are we here? So it has been a couple of years since we've been sort of full on board up here drill testing again. So to provide a bit of an overview of the project, we're here because this area's been off limits to exploration since 1978. In that time period, over half of the mineralization in Australia has been discovered through the application of geochemical and geophysical techniques. We have mineralization sticking out of the ground up here that was worked on in the 1906 up to 1912 at Grants and Wilson's and Ironclad and a couple others. And it's an opportunity that's quite rare and doesn't exist in a lot of tier 1 jurisdictions like Western Australia. So the opportunity that we see here is a sort of Cloncurry, Tennant Creek style system here in Western Australia. It's an unknown sort of style of mineralization in WA, but it's quite exciting. And we made a high grade copper, silver, gold, cobalt discovery in 2021, testing one of our first targets undercover. And it's essentially unexplored, no modern exploration, and we're really paving the way forward for this area. And we're currently undertaking our drilling program up here. It was meant to start in August. We've had some delays. It's been a wet year and a fire intensive year. So while it hasn't burned immediately behind me, a lot of our area has been scorched. So it is, there's been a few delays, and our field season is a bit shorter than we wanted, but we're up here now. It's 40 degrees and humid, and absolutely spectacular to be up here regardless. So in 2021, we tested one of our first targets undercover, and that was the Orion discovery. We had a peak intercept there of 16 meters at 2.2% copper, 6 grams gold, an ounce silver, 0.4% cobalt. Very, very exciting. The first hole that went into that, made that discovery, was actually hole 17. Was also hit quite a thick massive sulfide interval. And it's really showing that our evolving, we've only been on the boots on ground out here since 2019. We've done a lot of work trying to learn and crack the code on how to explore in this region. And we're pretty happy with that Orion discovery. We have grants. We see that Orion discovery has got potential to continue extending down to depth. And we actually have a diamond rig up here at the moment, which will be testing that with support from the GSWA, the EIS Exploration Incentive Scheme system, testing that down at depth, continuing to see that EM plate and that modeled MAGA anomaly go to depth, which is quite exciting, as well as testing extensions to the system. One of the big things we discovered on the back of the Orion discovery was that the black plain soil was only 1 to 9 meters thick. And before this, had this black plain soil, which you can sort of see behind me, this grassy country. It's a very chemically inert sort of environment, and it's not very good for geochem. And so a lot of our exploration was geophysically dominated. And when you look at geophysics dominated exploration, it's a bit of bump hunting, and you don't really know exactly what you're going to get. And so the more variables you can add in, more data sets you can add into your exploration and target ranking, the better. And in order to see the opportunity to bring in geochemical data set through low impact auger sampling was quite exciting. And since that 2021 discovery, while we've been focused on delivering the rare earth discovery down at Mangaroon, we've completed over 4,000 auger samples up here, creating a very nice geochemical data set. And we see that image on the left. You see the modeled mag blips, which are those blue blobs, and you have the modeled EM plate sitting right in between it. That's the Orion through cross section, and you can see the dotted lines there of the diamond drilling that we're planning to test at a depth. And above that, you can see that geochemical anomaly, which sits quite nicely about where the gossan or things would come near to daylighting if the black plain soil wasn't on top of it. So it showed us that this data set could produce, identify an additional data set that can help us identify Orion and then go and find Orion's friends. The idea up here is to find a camp of these massive sulfide deposits and see if we can't get to an Avanco style opportunity, prove up that sort of 20 million ton sort of target threshold to make this quite an attractive proposition. So we're very excited to be drilling some of these target areas. We've got 13 Orion lookalikes, geochemical, geophysical anomalies, some with outcropping gossans, and we're currently up here drilling away. That's the RC rig sitting on top and the diamond rig on night shift sitting below. So night shift is a much better time to be drilling up here. So even our RC rig is starting a bit early to try and make the most of the cooler weather. So we have quite a few targets to get through. We have, I think, what do we've had the diamond rig is currently on the first EIS hole. We've had some delays and quite a few breakdowns with the RC rig. The RC rig is currently broken down as we speak, and it was broken down towards the start of the program. So we put it in a water bore early on over the weekend when we first started drilling in earnest last week. And we've only gotten a couple of holes in. We'll provide more updates on this program as we progress, but it's we're drilling away. We are getting through some of our targets. It's probably unlikely that we'll get through the entirety of the program as part of this season, this window that we have to be up here. As you can see, the weather's quite warm and toasty behind us. And we'll get through as much as we can. Get the downhole EM crews are moving up here. They should be on site on Wednesday. Again, they're being delayed as well. So there's been a few delays. There's been a few breakdowns. That's exploration up in this part of the world for you. So anyway, we're getting through it, and we look forward to providing updates to the market as we get these drill programs tested and see what targets we get through. So we should have updates on this project throughout the program, depending on how the drilling goes and how much season time we have up here before we have to leave. We've already had a few thunderstorms. We've had fires kick up again around us, so it's a very interesting time to be up here. So moving on to Mangaroon. So we have the rare earths, the nickel and the gold down here. So looking at the scale of this project is quite significant. We've got over 5,000 square kilometers. Put that into perspective, to drive from the rare earths up to the nickel ground, it's about a 2 to 3 hour drive. So it's quite a substantial area with lots of potential. And I feel like we're just sort of getting started and unlocking that potential. So one of the first cabs off the rank from Mangaroon was the Orion, not the Orion discovery, the Yin discovery, which is the rare earth ironstones, very similar to Yangibana across the road, being developed by Hastings. And we've now essentially delivered 20 million ton of resource there. We have another resource coming out here shortly. And I'll take a step back a second. So got the Yin ironstones. So reasons why the Yin ironstones were so attractive. One, they're sticking out of the ground. We saw some of the thickest and highest grade intercepts of this region is seen. And so when you have a neighbor next door, Hastings, going into production on the back of this with offtakes and everything and a fairly significantly de-risked project, it's a very exciting proposition, especially for rare earths, which can be quite a black box and have a lot of complications to it. So which is why before we drilled, we confirmed the metallurgy. We could produce a high grade met using the exact same flow sheet that Hastings developed over a decade of work. And so we saw this as quite an attractive proposition. And with Hastings going into development next door and Wyloo getting involved with them, we wanted to act on this quite quickly. So we delivered that resource. We're in the middle of delivering additional resources. So we have quite a large scale potential. I think we've tested around 10% of the ironstone trend at Yin. We have, I think, 1 or 2 more batches of assays outstanding, which will hopefully be out in the next week or two. And those will be the final assays to come out prior to our last resource update, which should have a significant indicated component to it and really go towards de-risking the project and understanding the value of what we have based on the ironstones. So we see a very large scale potential. We've essentially matched Hastings resource base already in just 10 kilometers of our ironstone resource base. We have the exploration target sitting there. And when you look at the regional setting of Hastings and Dreadnought together, this is quite a significant camp with some very high NdPr and decent met. It's a pretty exciting project to be in. So what do we see going forward? We don't see much value on the back of increasing and continuing to increase the resource base. So we've delivered our resources, our target resource. We went set out to match Hastings resource. We'll have ongoing metallurgical test work, MREC test work, and de-risking to look at sort of the underpin study work and valuation aspects of the project. And so that's what you can expect to see on the ironstones going forward. Now, what is got some significant potential that we see for the rare earths and could significantly change the prospects of this region is that Gifford Creek carbonatite. So we've done, we started out, when we started out in, when we first came out here, we identified, the carbonatite as being four and a half kilometers long, 1 kilometer wide based on the magnetic data. And we drilled a program, looked at that, how do we test this thing? Statistical based analysis, it's not sticking out of the ground. A mountain pass resource, which is a world-class resource, is 750 by 150 meters. So 150 by 150 meter space drill program would tap 1 or 3 holes into a mountain pass. And since the area is quite small, we undertook that exploration program as the quickest bang for buck sort of way to get that done. But as we tested outside that, that target area of the 4.5 kilometers of the interpreted carbonatites, and at that stage it looked like ovoid feature 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The carbonatites just kept going. And so we did a model of the geophysical data, and that showed the magnetics said this actually looks like similar features that could be about 9 kilometers long. So we started to test that, and that was sort of our step out drilling that you saw sort of earlier this year. And then we stepped out again, and we hit carbonatite still, and then we tested another kilometer sort of wildcat hole, and continued to be in carbonatite, even again outside of that 9 kilometer thing that we interpreted from the magnetics. So we put a pause on the carbonatites at that stage, like how big is this thing? The pattern drilling when it's a small area makes a lot of sense. It's efficient and effective. But once you start getting to a significant size, that's a lot of drilling. So we did a few geophysical orientation surveys. The gravity, carbonatites are quite dense. We did that over the regional strike of that area where it potentially could continue. And we confirmed that carbonatite, that dense unit over 17 kilometers in strike. That is extremely significant as a much larger interpretation of an intrusion from our original 4.5 kilometers. And the gravity is really sort of on the back of the drilling that we put in to date, on the back of the resource that we've identified at C3, we see a significant cracking of the code in order to use gravity to not only help us define the extents of the carbonatite, but then also do some more detailed work in targeting within it. So I'll talk a bit about that. But next stage is on the carbonatites. We have a detailed gravity survey underway as we speak. That'll generate targets for the RC testing. Why, I'll show you in a minute. And then once we finish up here in Kimberley, we'll mobilize back down to Mangaroon and do some of that target testing as part of following up the nickel drilling and some of the gold drilling at Mangaroon. So when you look at that scale, the 17 kilometers, most people think of carbonatites, you think of the Arasha, you think of Mount Weld, these big ovoid features, big mag units, and then you have sort of a central sort of enriched unit in the middle of it, so phosphate over here, some niobium over here, sort of what you picture in these carbonatites, but there's a lot of carbonatites with lots of different orientations. And one of the biggest carbonatite intrusions in the world, one of the largest sources of carbonatites, rare earths globally, is Bayan-Obo in China. So Mountain Pass, Mount Weld, and Bayan-Obo produce a lot of the world's light rare earths, neodymium and praseodymium. And one of the things about Bayan-Obo is, again, it has a very similar age and also very similar geometry to what we see at the Gifford Creek carbonatite. It's about 18 kilometers long, 1 to 2 kilometers wide. And quite significantly, it has multiple deposits within it. So I'm not saying that we have Bayan-Obo. I mean, we've seen the C3 resource, that's 1%, this is 6. So I'm not saying we have Bayan-Obo straight up right now. What we're saying is this thing has the same scale as Bayan-Obo, and there's the potential to find additional areas of mineralization within it. And that means that C3 doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, but also doesn't mean it's the worst. So we see significant exploration upside in assessing the carbonatites because we could still find something high grade, really thick quality mineralization within the Gifford Creek carbonatite complex. And we can hopefully crack that code with the gravity and do targeted drilling to hit that. So going into C3 and how the gravity is going to help us to deliver that. So C3 was what I referred to as an accidental resource. We did the 160 by 160 drilling to try and find mineralization within the carbonatite complex. And then from that, we did 80-meter fence line drilling to try and find higher grade mineralization within that, trying to find those siderite plugs, those rare earth enriched plugs within the carbonatite system, those more refractory ones. And what that did is that actually proved up quite a consistent supergene unit and a consistent body. And Lynn Weidenbauer, who does our resource work, was quite happy to put a resource around that. So it's an unintended consequence, it's an unintended resource. And so we delivered that, but it's also allowed us to do orientation work on the gravity, because within the C3 resource, there were two areas of deeper mineralization. And so on the right side of this image, you'll see our modeled supergene. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the modeled detailed gravity. So we did a really detailed, I think 20 by 20 or 40 by 40 meter space gravity survey over this. And we're able to identify the areas of grav lows correlate with the areas of deeper mineralization. And what we see some thicker, higher grades within those areas of gravity lows, some deeper weathering, and more residual enrichment. And what you can also see from that is, if you look at that gravity, it shows some exploration upside, slightly to the northwest of the northern, and slightly to the southeast from the southern residual area. So if we get this detailed data, so 20 by 20, we've then subset that out. Well, we can mimic, or we can essentially see these residual bodies, this deeper weathering with 100 by 100 meter data. And that's will allow us to generate targets for drilling and try and find something bigger and better than C3. So we're very excited by that. That detailed gravity survey is underway right now across the 17 kilometers of the carbonatites, and we will have targets defined before we leave here in the Kimberley, get down back to Mangaroon and test some of those targets. We see significant upside in changing the fortunes of that project and that region on the back of hitting something like that. So very exciting. We look forward to doing smart exploration instead of just pattern drilling. Moving on to the nickel. So the Money Intrusion, our joint venture with First Quantum, earn in with First Quantum. So this was a 50-kilometer long outcropping mafic ultramafic intrusion that had high tenor blebby sulfides at surface. For that earn in, they have to spend 12 mil to get their initial 51%. So First Quantum still currently has 0% of the project. And they can get up to 70% upon fully funding us to a decision to mine. So we went into this program, we had 5 conductors. And one of the first conductors that we put our hole into hit some massive sulfide and a thick halo of disseminated neck textured sulfide mineralization. Very, very exciting. I think coming into this program, there was sort of questions about whether or not First Quantum would stay involved. And when I think we saw that, looked at those original plates, they were 10 by 20. It was 37,000 Siemens. That's a screamer of a plate, but it was 10 by 20 meters or whatever it was. So when First Quantum was going to drill that hole, committed to drill it. We want to see the massive sulfide, see if it is high tenor and the rest of it. And we came up with, you get the 2 meters, hit the massive sulfide. But on the surprising side, there was actually quite a large halo of high tenor sulfides around it. And why that was exciting is because we started to step out from that. And so we had the 2 plates there, the 2 small plates, hit the massive sulfide, stepped out again, hit more thick disseminated mineralization. I think we got 20, 30, up to 50 meters of mineralization through this area. And it just kept going. And why that is significant? That's significant because the geophysical techniques used to date didn't highlight any of that mineralization. So First Quantum had identified this shallow part of the keel where we thought the keel of the intrusion was coming close to surface. And we did the EM over that, looking for massive sulfides. But the IP anomaly, so if you have these high tenors, you don't need to have massive sulfides to have something of similar grade to Nova Bollinger or something else. So it's a very exciting proposition. IP, we actually did an IP survey, Dreadnought did an IP survey leading into this program. It highlighted that the disseminated mineralization could be highlighted beautifully. It's a beautifully geophysical environment to do IP. And so now we're going to take a step back and look at doing IP across the Money Intrusion. So again, why is that exciting? Technically, the Spokathon trend's open for about 2.5 kilometers. So the other mineralization that we drilled last year was about 2.5K south from what we drilled. And the EM is searching that near surface space. The IP, essentially all massive sulfide has a halo of disseminated sulfides around it. And so the IP technique can identify that sulfide, that disseminated sulfide, which by itself could be economic in its own right, similar to Zhenchuan in China, which is a 500 million ton, 1% sort of deposit. Secondly, that IP halo could then identify areas with disseminated mineralization to provide downhole EM platforms to test with deep EM techniques. So not only can the IP identify mineralization that's economic in its own right, it could also be the vector providing a downhole EM platform for finding massive sulfide deeper in the system. So we've done some EM over this area. We have found mineralization that's not lit up by that. That mineralization could be significant, and we're going to have a reassessment of this with First Quantum. It opens up, again, the rest of the money intrusion to finding significant mineralization on this. Very exciting. We got downhole EM and assay results pending for the rest of those results, rest of that drilling that we did. And we're currently chasing an IP crew, First Quantum chasing an IP crew to start doing surveys across the rest of this intrusion. So we're looking forward to continuing working with First Quantum and doing exploration across the money intrusion. Takes us to Mangaroon gold. So this has been sitting in the background. It's one of the original reasons why we got into Mangaroon, in addition to the nickel. And while we've been drilling the rare earths, we've managed to consolidate the rest of the gold ground within the Mangaroon project area. That includes the Star of Mangaroon, which is mined by Pashless. It's a high-grade deposit. It's been mined for a little bit back in the 1960s and drilled down to sort of 40, 50 meters depth with some really nice high-grade intercepts. We see the Star of Mangaroon as a Penny West potential in its own right, and we're looking forward to drilling that. And then stepping out from that, we see this 14-kilometer long mineralized shear zone with dozens of historical workings, no modern geochemistry. It's never been flown with magnetics, never had soil surveys done on it. And we see the opportunity to find a camp of high-grade gold deposits, in which case you could be looking at a Bellevue type opportunity. So we see a lot of excitement here. Gold goes up and down, but it's always a good place to be. So we got a really exciting opportunity here to identify some high-grade golds, and we look forward to drilling some of those targets again after we finish up here in the Kimberley. Some of the targets. One of the things that was quite exciting about this, we actually have soils crews out there now doing some infill and extension. The Tiger target down there, so Sam has a thing for golf, so I think you'll see a bit of a golf theme come out on some of these targets. So Tiger, so there's two main historical workings here. You have the Star of Mangaroon itself, and you also have the lead gold mine, which we most recently acquired. And so we did soils over this area, and the Tiger anomaly, which is at the end of our soil survey, end of our area of interest, actually produced a lead and soil anomaly that was higher than the lead mine, and a gold and soil anomaly that was stronger than the Star of Mangaroon. And that's just, you can't ask for much more than that. So we've got crews out there. They've been mapping, they've been sampling. We're doing infill soil sampling over this area. We're looking forward to getting out there and kicking some more rocks and getting stuck into the gold at Star of Mangaroon. Central Yilgarn, again, it's sort of sitting in the background. I think it's been the longest project review in the history of the ASX, probably. So we have been working away. Lee has been working hard on this project this year. She also broke her ankle playing footy. So like our rigs, we've had lots of breakdowns even of our team this year. So it's we see the Forestania, Lake Johnson nickel analog. So we've been doing some work with Nuexco. We'll have some news flow coming out on this soon. Lithium anomalies. There's lots of historical pegmatite swarms out here. I'm looking forward. I was hoping to actually be out there instead of up here in the Kimberley. I was going to be out there at Central Yilgarn, so hopefully I'll be out there in the next week or two, doing some sampling across these pegmatite swarms to see if we can't find something better than Peggy Sue. And that's a lot of that's focused around the ground that we picked up from Arrow last year or earlier this year. So next steps, we got some mapping, geochemistry, we have geophysics crew. We've had geophysics crews on site, so we're getting that data processed. Lots of soil geochemistry crews sitting in the background. So we're looking forward to getting this area updated, getting the project review done, some targets generated, and hopefully targeting for some drilling for next year. It also takes us to Bresnahan, other projects in the background while we've been busy chasing the rigs. We've expanded this land holding quite significantly. We've completed the detailed mag reg. We've completed some targeting, forming this region, and we're getting ready. Kev's getting ready to head out here and do some stream sediment sampling, follow-up rock chip sampling, and soil sampling across these known areas. So we have a lot of exciting projects. We're keeping that portfolio full of exciting targets. We always want to be testing targets like we are up here at Kimberley right now. Exciting targets with the diamond rig and the RC rig. We have more targets being generated and being targeted at Mangaroon for the gold, the nickel, and the rare earths. And then we have the pipeline, these conceptual targets sitting there, and who knows what these will be in the next 12 months. So we're looking forward to keeping that pipeline full and continue delivering discoveries across our portfolio. So before we get into the Q&A, I have had quite a few questions already coming through email and the rest on the share purchase plan. So wanted to provide just some quick comments on that. So the share purchase plan, it's 4.7 cents. It's on the exact same terms as we had with the capital raise. We've had a very painful 6 months. We dove headfirst into the rare earths because the rare earths were 120 a kilo and going gangbusters, and your commodity price drops by 50, 60, 70%. And it's been a painful time. And we see a lot of analogs sort of being there along with how the lithium was in 2018, 2019, 2020, when lithium prices dropped below 500 and Altura goes into bankruptcy and Pilbara Minerals picks them up. So we're hoping we stand by delivering the value. We have the values there on the rare earths, and we look forward to delivering that. But in the meantime, our share price has been tanking. So we have stopped the bloodletting, it seems, we hope, with the nickel and the copper work that we're doing and the rest. So we wanted to give shareholders an opportunity to partake along with the rest of the cap raise. So this will be kicking off on the 9th of October. One of the things that we strongly encourage all shareholders to do is to get onto Atomic, the links there, the links in the announcement that we just put out, and put in your email details so that we can send the details to you for the share purchase plan by email and communications by email. That helps bring down the costs for Dreadnought. I think we have 9,000 shareholders now. So it helps bring down the cost if we don't have to do mail outs to all 9,000 people. And you'll also get your paperwork a lot faster. For those that aren't on email, it will be mailed out to you, but it might take a week or more for that email, that mail to get through the post. So not sure we sort of lose control of that, but for those that have registered on Atomic and have their emails in there, when those documents go live on the 9th of October, those will be straight into your inbox, straight in Atomic, and we encourage everyone to get online and do it that way. So with all of that, I think that's everything for the presentation. If there's any questions, which I'm sure there's lots, after being focused as a rare earth company for the last 12 months and getting back into our bread and butter exploration across our portfolio, I'm sure there's lots of questions coming up. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Dean. Well, as you mentioned, we'll move on to the Q&A session now. Please submit your questions via the Q&A function, and we'll endeavour to see as many questions answered as possible. And if there are any questions that remain unanswered, you can forward them to Dean and his team to follow up later. Dean, first question: despite recent headways faced by the rare earth space, are you still receiving communication from new or existing interested parties regarding the Mangaroon rare earth project?
Yes, there's still lots of strategic interest in the rare earths. Like we say before, rightly or wrongly, optimistically, whatever it might be, we do see lots of parallels to what lithium went through in the early days, and so we still see lots of strategic interest. There is still $3 billion worth of infrastructure being built in Western Australia alone and elsewhere around the world in order to process neodymium and praseodymium. So there is going to be that increase in demand. There are people looking for offtake. There is still interest. We are still talking with people. Prices are depressed right now, but there's still interest.
Thank you. And can you please share with us the details of plans to transition Dreadnought from exploration to mining?
Exploration to mining. Yes, that's a pretty common question for Dreadnought, and certainly appreciate that. So I think, I guess first up, I'll say mining is not the only option available to us, and nor is it always the preferred option. There's a lot of companies that are going bankrupt at the moment on the back of developing and design. We've seen even lots of scoping studies turn out quite negative, even if they're positive, for quite a few companies. Having said that, from day one, we have always said there's three options for our success. We are an exploration company, we're an exploration team, and we see the three definitions of success as an outright sale, asset sale / takeover, as we saw with Sirius, Noble Bollinger, $1.8 billion takeover by IGO. Another option for us is that joint venture with like we have with First Quantum, or like Gold Road has with Gold Fields and developing Gruyere. And then the third option is, of course, going into mining ourselves. Now, if we are going to go into mining, then that is a completely different skill set and business to what we are right now. So we're an exploration team. I'm sitting out here in the bush. We're sitting on the rigs, helping log core and lift core trays and the rest of it. I'm not the one building the mine, doing the mine engineering and all the rest of that sort of work. So if we are going to have a whole new team come in, then that's probably going to look like a demerger. So you're going to be a reward for shareholders regardless, because we are all shareholders ourselves. But if we are going to go into mining, that's a whole new team, that's a whole new company, And so we'll probably see a demerger in that sort of situation. So we have those three options there. Yes, we could go into mining, but before we could, and if we did, we'd look at a demerger. But before we can actually look at that, before we can assess what's going to be the best outcome for our shareholders, we need to know the value of the asset. So we still have the resource update coming out by the end of this year. We still have a fair bit of project de-risking across the project area. And then once we have an idea of the value, once we have an idea of the appetite, then we can look at what's in the best interest of shareholders. Is that an outright sale to someone who has an interest in the offtake or building a mine next door? Is that a joint venture partner with a chemical business company or a downstream processor? Or is that we're not seeing that value because the market's depressed at the moment, so we're going to demerge this, bring in a crack team that loves developing mines as much as we love exploration, give that new life, and we continue exploring the other assets. So until we know the value proposition of the project and have some few key questions answered, we're not in a position to make that decision. So what's the timing on that? What's the details of that? Let's deliver the resource, deliver some de-risking. We're coming close to the end of the year. So I think start of next year, we can get really stuck into a lot of these discussions, the value proposition, and find the best way forward for that Mangaroon rare earth asset. The other side to that is as well, you never want to sell something with the exploration upside not fully identified, and we haven't quite, we've had this breakthrough at the carbonatites. We see significant upside there. That could entirely the value proposition of that project area. That's why we're cracking on that detailed gravity, and we'll be doing some targeted testing before the end of this year. So what's the timing? Let's get this resource out. Let's test the carbonatites. Let's get into early next year, and then we can start assessing the best outcomes for our shareholders to get value for this project while we continue to assess the other projects in the background.
What is the company's main focus and how valuable is it to shareholders?
Main focus. So our main focus. So our main focus is exploration and discovery. So we are an exploration company. We're here to make discoveries. That question might be geared towards, do we have a focus on a commodity or a project? The answer is no. Well, we don't. We're an exploration company. All of our tenure are essentially liabilities, they're not assets until there's resources on them. And when you look at some of the big discoveries, the type of thing that we're trying to look at, you look at Chalice, you look at Sirius Resources. Chalice, Julimar was a footnote in a quarterly announcement before they made that. They're focused on their Goldfield project over in Victoria. You look at Sirius Resources, they were focused on the gold at Polar Bear, and they made the Nova Bollinger discovery. That's the focus of exploration. You always are looking to generate good targets, not fall in love with the project, in love with the target, drill them and make that discovery. So what are we focused on? We're focused on making the exploration discovery across our early stage projects. And what's that worth the shareholders? Each of those is a potential $1 billion opportunity. You never know. There's no guarantees in exploration, but that's the dream. That's where you explore in new regions and new terrains to make that big discovery and deliver that value to shareholders. And that's what we're here for.
Why raise further funds after having raised a significant amount earlier this year?
Because resource drilling is very expensive, and mine development's even more expensive. So when we did that cap raise at the start of the year, those funds were to deliver resources, project de-risking, study work, lots of approvals. I think we've done 6 heritage surveys, 6 environmental surveys, 3 resource updates. We've drilled over 50,000 meters of drilling, and that's just on the rare earths alone. We raised that money to also do some target testing, which we're doing up here in the Kimberley. We've been advancing the projects in the background. We've done the gold work, gold approvals, gold surveys, gold targeting. We've done the work at Central Yilgarn and the work at Bresnahan. So we've done a lot of the work that we said that we were going to do with that cap raise at the start of the year. And as we came into the end of this year, changing that pattern, we wanted to set ourselves up into next year. And because we've been depressed, we wanted to get that out with the SPP as well. To give shareholders a bite of that apple as well, should they feel so inclined. So this should set us up to get us through next year. We'll have the resources out. We'll have the carbonatites tested. We'll have the Kimberley tested. We'll have the gold tested. We'll have more of the nickel going, and we'll really see as we get close to that commercialization stage for Mangaroon and the rare earths to put us in position to be funded for that.
And has Dreadnought furthered any discussions around JVs for Mangaroon or any other projects?
Yep. So have we progressed in the discussions there? Essentially, the question there is no. So is there lots of interest? Yes. Have we progressed any discussions? No. And that goes back to what I was saying before. Until we know what we have, until we know the value, it's treat them mean, keep them keen. and keep everyone on their toes. So until we know what we have, we're not looking at joint ventures. We're an exploration company. This is what we do. We make the discoveries, deliver the resources. We'll be looking at joint ventures when we get to that stage. We have the value proposition in hand with the resources and the discoveries for the rare earths in particular, and well, all of our projects on an individual basis. And then at that stage, we can start discussing the outcomes for that project, be it an outright sale, a joint venture, or a demerger. So until we have that resource in hand, the carbonatites tested, and some other project de-risking done, that's when we'll really start talking and advancing those discussions in earnest, and that would probably be early next year.
What was the reasoning behind the 10 million value in the raise? Why not more or less?
We saw that as a value that would get us through 12 months. And so we saw that get us through well into next year, and deliver all the programs that we needed, not have too much dilution. So, the last 6 months, we've had 3 rigs going nonstop at Mangaroon. Say lots of surveys, lots of work, lots of this. The burn rate's been pretty amazing. Now we're going back to our old school exploration, generating targets and advancing those targets. Lots more news flow, lots more smaller bang for buck programs, not the big resource drill outs. And so we didn't need a fat stack of cash. We want to get out there, make that discovery, advance our projects to discovery over the next 12 months. And that money should give us the funds to do that. And in addition, that gives us the time as well to advance commercial discussions around the rare earths.
And next question, does the number of projects not dilute capital focus?
So we see the number of projects. Okay, to be fair, we have about 4 or 5 projects at the moment, and that's probably one more than we wanted. But Bresnahan sort of popped itself up as an opportunity that we couldn't really step away from. First chance to do an unconformity heavy rare earth sort of a thing. If WA ever changed their stance on uranium, there's uranium out there as well. But it's an interesting proposition. We always want to have sort of 3 projects on the go. Does it dilute when you're looking for $1 billion discovery, multi-billion-dollar discovery opportunity? I'd say the dilution isn't there as much. When you're looking at the prize and having these projects in the back burner. Again, Julimar was not a main project. They had 2 or 3 projects in the background they didn't talk about, and that's the one that delivered the discovery. Nova Bollinger, again, like it was Polar Bear. It was these other projects that were the chance. Those were the runs. And then when you look at joint venturing things out early as well, you look at the flip side of that is you look at Ora Banda that divested the Mount Ida project, and now you have Delta Lithium that's significantly multiples larger to the company that gave it away. You have Ramelius that actually sold the lithium rights to Kathleen Valley to Liontown for $250,000. And I'll look at the difference between Liontown and Ramelius. So we see the optionality in having these underexplored greenstone projects that we can advance. We don't see the dilution being that significant when posed against the potential upside of a discovery. So I guess that's the answer for that one.
And with the lack of announcements in the Kimberley on drilling so far, does this correlate to no significant finds with PXRF from the current drilling program?
There's not too much I can say about that. So we haven't drilled that many holes. We will provide updates as we go. And yes, I'm not going to say we haven't hit anything. I'm not going to say we have hit anything. So we are drilling away. We have had lots of breakdowns and lots of delays. I believe I saw someone comment we started the cap raise because we didn't hit anything in our best targets. All 13 of our targets are best targets. You look at the discovery of Orion was actually hole 17. So it is exploration. We have to get through these. When we announced that drilling, when we announced the SPP, we had not started drilling the exploration holes yet. We actually started drilling that day. The first hole we put in up here over the weekend was a water bore drilling, water bore hole to support the program. I'm sure you can get Salt PD out there to check us and see if fact check me. But we put so we are exploring. We have a lot of holes ahead of us. And we've had a lot of breakdowns and a lot of delays. We're not where we wanted to be with target testing. And we still have a lot of really high priority targets that have not had a drill hole into them yet.
You mentioned you won't likely complete the current program before the wet season at Kimberley. How do you anticipate you will drill in terms of percentage?
Oh, well, that is very difficult at this stage. I think we'll hopefully get through about 25 to 30% of the program if the rig continues with productivity. I think we've had 2 breakdowns. We've had the booster blow up. We had to get an entirely new booster truck up here to site. And we've also had rod handler get bent. So we've had a few issues with the RC rig in particular. So, every day we drill fewer holes than when there's a breakdown. So it's how long's a piece of string, in this case, how short's a piece of string with an RC breakdown. So at this stage, we're probably looking at 25 to 30% of the program. So we're trying to prioritize our targets as much as we can. We got the downhole EM crew coming up soon. So these things are like looking for needles in a haystack. So, had we drilled the Orion discovery hole just 20, 30 meters south, we would have hit nothing. So it is, these are slides in this sort of environment. It's a needle in a haystack. So we're drilling our best targets. We got the downhole EM, something we didn't have last time. So we should have a very good idea of what we've hit, have something to follow up and a program to finish up on.
And the next question, can you give us a view of the camp?
A view of the camp. Yeah, I think, can you guys see the camp over here? You see the caravans and things like that. Got some geos out there looking at diamond core in the distance and everything else. So yeah, this is not an artificial background here. This is the actual bush. So
why did Dreadnought decide to partly raise through a share purchase plan?
Because this is probably one of the first time, I think there's always been an outcry for the share purchase plan, and it's something I always try to raise with the board when we do capital raises. So we are a retail dominated stock. We do have a very strong retail support. And in this case, in the last few cap raises we've gone higher and higher, and we've had lots of strength and momentum. And there wasn't, a lot of them were done at market price. With this one, we've had a downturn over the last 6 months. We've had a hit. We've put a bit of a discount on this cap raise, and so we offered it to the SPP because we wanted at this stage to offer that to our shareholders. We are a bit down. We believe a lot of that's for things outside of our control. That's the market, and we wanted to give them all an opportunity to contribute to the company as we have going forward. So we're in a moment of weakness. There's a bit more of a depression or a bit more of a discount in that share price, and so we wanted to give our shareholders the opportunity to partake in that, as we feel like that's a lot more fair to our retail shareholders, as opposed to over diluting, taking a massive shareholding with someone, an external party that hasn't come down with us on this on the last couple of months.
And when do you anticipate the first essays back from Orion's friends?
Well, the truck is arriving today if it gets through the sandy patches on the way through. So it'll be a couple of weeks. We've only drilled a handful of holes, so it will be. I think our first assays at this stage will be looking at 4 to 6 weeks from now. So they'll put us into November. So November for that, which is I think what we said the program would be. So yeah, from November we should start getting assays from this project.
Next question, what are the present delays in assay results?
Present delays in assay results. So I don't know if you've noticed the rare earth assays have actually started picking up again. So that long promised instrument from ALS finally came into production the week we stopped drilling at the Ironstones. So those have been picking up. So we should have all those assays through. I'm not sure what the delays are for the non-rare earth elements, the rare earths, because there's not a whole lot of installed capacity around Australia. With the base metals and the gold, so it'll just be a product of standard sort of turnaround time, which I think will be around 4 weeks for a lot of that. So 2 to 4 weeks, hopefully, depending on how the instruments are going with gold and the base metals.
And can you provide an update on the review of C6?
Review of C6. So we've had our carbonatite expert have a look at that, and essentially it warrants further work. So we do have quite a bit of pyroxenite down there. Part of the grav survey, we did a bit of the grav survey over C6 as well, and there is some interesting features in that. So it's under review. It's one of those things. There's not a screaming target. So it's one of these things. We don't fall in love with targets or projects, but we don't forget them either. So it will continue to be assessed in the background. The way to advance C6 in the next round, we're talking about this a little bit internally. It's probably going to be something like an air core program. We don't think we get away with an auger program over it because of the transported cover. So it is, it's not dead. It's still there. There is hope. There is a pulse, but it probably doesn't stack up to a lot of the other targets like Orion's lookalikes, the C1 to C5, which is now the Gifford Creek carbonatites, some of the things that might be popping up across the project area. So it is still there, but it just needs it's one of those things that it needs work to define a target. And that's always a hard thing to do, especially when that work to define the target is drilling. So that's probably, it's not dead, but it needs work to define a target, and that work is probably drilling. So We'll continue to assess that in the background, and there will be work done down there. It's just a matter of when and what priority it comes in at.
Well, thank you very much for your insights there, Dean, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today and for your questions. If you think of any further questions, please direct them to Dean and his team at Dreadnought. A copy of this recording will be made available for viewing over the next few days. Thanks again, Dean, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.